Right.
Give me a signal or whatever.
Yep, yeah, we're off. We're off now.
Right, we're on. Good evening and good afternoon. Or what's it? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, citizens of Dawnshire, wherever you may be. To quote a semi-famous line from a semi-famous movie, The Truman Show, today I am hosting the Truck Cast with my usual co-host, so far my only co-host, Englander.
Hello. Glad to be back.
Yes. Today, it's a bit informal. We don't have too many topics of conversation, so we shall be talking about a few quick Dawnshire updates, current events / rank punditry, the sort of Russia-Ukraine nonsense, a few unpopular opinions that we both may have. We have not discussed these opinions beforehand, so you'll be getting our fresh reactions to each other.
I mean, we've only just discussed what we're going to be talking about a few minutes ago, so...
Yes, we only made this short little list of topics a mere moments before we started recording.
Pulled it out of thin air.
Yes. Yes. Work stories. I've not got too many of those, but I imagine, Englander, you work at a golf course, right?
Yeah, I have a few.
Yes. The only way it could be better would be if you lived in Florida. If you were working in a Florida golf course, you'd have...
Yeah.
Well, I guess the UK would still have the meth heads, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, I'll say it's not a golf course as in normal golf. It's a
Not
crazy golf
though.
course. You know, those mini ones with the are meant to be
mini golf.
Yeah, mini golf. That's it.
I thought it was an ordinary golf course, but you just had eccentric customers for some odd reason.
No, this one tends to attract some very strange sorts of people. Anyway, carry on with the agenda.
All right. So after work stories, it'd just be childhood stories, which would probably be more my domain since growing up in the military, I've lived in many different parts of the United States, and I've visited many different parts of the United States. But I do expect that Englander will have some fair contributions to it as well.
Some stories from the centre of London.
That almost sounds apocalyptic. That almost sounds like Escape from New York.
Yeah, something like that.
When you put it that way, some gritty stories of a young lad who grew up in the centre of London.
Well, I think my childhood stories best be a little shorter than yours, considering yours sounds a lot more, wholesome and sweet and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Not always sweet, I must say, but I do think, probably always wholesome. Anyway, and oh yes, where did it all go wrong? That was a sort of a last-minute addition to the list by Englander. And I suppose we'll just kick it off at the beginning of the list with Dawnshire updates. So let's see, just go into
so we just
it was ideas and feedback. So I'll just
Okay.
I will just scroll up a little bit.
Please, any viewers as well, consider joining the Discord. You'd be more than welcome.
Oh yes, if any of you viewers of the Truckcast would like to join the Dawnshire Discord server, feel free to make a request in the comments, and I will I will leave an invite in response. So basically we've been talking about a few things. One of which was oaths. What sort of oaths might the Stewart, the ruler of Dawnshire, give upon his coronation? And the first sort of oath, the primary oath we might call it, that I had in mind goes a little something like this. Today before God and man, under the glory of our King, the eternal sovereign ruler of the universe, I swear that I shall do all things possible to protect the sovereignty, liberty, and traditions of Donshire's people, and in all ways fulfill my duties as the steward of Dawnshire, even at the cost of my own life, so help me God. That was what I had in mind for sort of the primary oath. Then we would have some much shorter, well, slightly shorter secondary oaths surrounding it. Like a little. I guess that's basically just him promising to do his job.
Mm.
Then after that, there would be the steward would promise to lead the militia in defense of Dawnshire and therefore protect the land and people. Then promised to uphold and enforce the Constitution
I guess
of
it's just details
Dawnshire.
of
Therefore,
what the job is, then, isn't it? The first one kind of
yeah,
encapsulates it, the whole thing.
yeah. The first one is basically just like a big, sort of a broad, perhaps slightly vague encapsulation of everything it means to be steward. And then the secondary oaths, the two or three secondary oaths would be basically just going through a few of the smaller aspects, like, oh yeah, I'll go lead the militia and I'll basically sort of keep the any kind of mayors, sheriffs, clan, like clan chiefs, basically just promising to keep everyone in line and make sure that all the other governing officials of Dawnshire abide by the Constitution. Um, Therefore, defending liberty and order. And it occurs to me though, because one thing that we did, I forgot to write it down in the Discord. I guess I'll do it now. Is there ought to be an oath to do with the audiences, I suppose. It's the steward's duty to listen. Well, to listen to what the common people have to say and address their
Mm.
problems appropriately.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Not
So
not
I,
in the
it's
not in the manner of our current mass democracies, though, I would suppose.
yeah, not in the sort of weird, bureaucratic. Like it would literally be like there's a certain regimented time of day, in between lunch and dinner, maybe, when the palace is literally just open to the public, and literally anyone who has any kind of issue can just come in and just have a little chat with the steward and just be like, oh, hey, good afternoon. I've been having a bit of a problem with the such and such thing. Uh, like maybe it's like, oh, there's a small rat infestation in my grain silo. Do you think you could send a couple of your boys or whatever down with the terriers or something to help me and my boys take care of it? Something like that. Like
Mm.
very much just like farmers chatting with their neighbors, sort of stuff, just in a slightly more formal setting of like the audience of the steward.
Yes, and getting the attention of um, the monarch, or trying to say things to them. It wouldn't be kind of, you're, I don't know, you've been having parties, for instance, or something, like during lockdowns or whatever, like that sort of thing. It would be much more minor, much more kind of um,
Mm.
less the kind of democratic politics we see today, I suppose.
Yeah, like there might not be like a formal petitioning sort of process like there is today, but if a guy came in with 50 signatures from all of his neighbors, is like, hey, the stretch of road in front of all of our farms is rather eroded, and we'd like you to send some men to go take care of that. Well, then obviously it would be within the steward's authority and actually, like one of his duties essentially to go and check and, well, I guess, for one thing, go and make sure the road actually is damaged as they're saying, and then if it is, to literally send, somebody to go and help fix it.
Yes, it's just all in the kind of aim of building community, isn't it? With each other, helping
Yeah,
with these odd jobs and these sorts of things. And
yeah.
as you said, even the steward
Which
can come and
actually,
give a hand with these sorts of things.
yeah, which actually does remind me. It's like for that matter, it might be a thing. One of the stewards sort of like things might be is because like you don't really like today. Like if you've just got a minor problem, you don't call the state to take care of it. So
mm,
theoretically, in Dawnshire, people wouldn't be going to the steward with every little problem, but it might be a thing like if all their neighbors are busy or something,
yeah.
they might go, and potentially that would even be a thing, like the thing that might distinguish a competent from an incompetent steward would be like he wouldn't be too gullible, like a
Mm.
competent steward would say it's like, oh yes, I'll take this into consideration, and then he would actually like go and check and make sure that there was some reason why this person couldn't take care of the problem themselves or why their neighbors couldn't help them.
But I'm sure in the beginning, when if Dawnshire didn't have kind of very many people, at that point, I'm sure the steward would probably get lots of requests and all sorts of things. But I suppose as it expands, you would kind of have the elders taking some of those positions instead. So you go up to the elder in your village or
Yeah,
something of Dawnshire, and you say, "Oh yes, can I have this
yeah,
help?" or whatever. And I suppose the steward's role will be much
yeah.
more administrative at
The
that
thing
point.
is, it's like, yeah, and we do want these people to be as independent as possible.
Mm,
So there might be a good deal less of it's like, mm, I think we would have to be somewhat strict about the circumstances in which the steward or even the lower authorities, like the elders, are allowed to actually act, because we don't want these people to think that they can just rely on the authorities for everything, the way that people think they can rely on the authorities for everything
yeah,
today.
but they won't be kind of enslaved to the welfare state like we have today. It would be a much different, a much more voluntary um, sort of idea. So in the community, we would
Yes.
be each sort of family would be, I suppose, self-sufficient, but at that and or capable of being so. But at that same time, there would still be kind of sort of mixing with each other and building that community with one another.
Yeah. Well, I suppose we're just searching for a sort of golden mean, I suppose, to put it maybe in Aristotelian terms.
Yeah.
We are looking for a community where people depend on each other enough that they sort of cooperate and it's very smooth, but they rely on themselves enough that they're still able to work by themselves. That they're not, I suppose, where people work together, but they're still like capable of being independent when they need to.
Mm. Well, in our current cities and those sorts of areas, we have individuals that it's just one person can feed themselves, do all sorts of things by themselves. They don't need a community. I mean, they don't even need all they need really is the
Well,
state
I
to handle
suppose
a few
that's the
things.
paradox of modernity.
Mm.
Suppose that's the paradox of modernity, because in the modern day, yes, one person can work and get all the money he needs to feed himself, but he's not actually able to generate those resources himself. The average person today is not able to grow crops or raise
No,
animals or build a house in the way that earlier generations could.
but you're able to earn some sort of be a wage slave, and earn earn enough money to get by and go to the I don't know the local supermarket and buy the food you need without having any effort in it at all, or without kind of any human
Yeah.
interaction whatsoever.
Yeah, like literally one of the great horrors of the 21st century, and I suppose one of the things we're trying to escape with Dawnshire is the fact that it has recently become possible to work completely from home and to order every like every material and every service, like every good and every service that you might need, and have it delivered directly to your home, so that theoretically a person could live their entire life nowadays without ever leaving home.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Like we're slowly becoming pod people that just, our only interaction with the outside world is VR or the internet.
Mm. And I suppose that's the modern sense of individualism, and I guess the individualism that we would want to have is actually is real in the sense of we would build ourselves up to be able to survive in, the kind of and actually have practical skills, whereas in the modern world our sense of individualism just
Yeah.
comes with, you know, being completely dependent on the state and, the
Yeah. Like the individualism of Dawnshire is the like the ideal man of Dawnshire is a man who can, who can cut down trees and build a log cabin all by himself, or who can cut out, like sod blocks and build
mm.
a, like an earth and a sod house all by himself.
But at the
A
same
man who can
time,
go out on the on,
go on.
or like a man who can go out on the rugged plains of Wyoming and tame a wild Mustang.
Mm.
A man who can hunt and trap and fish, and a man who knows, the times and the seasons of planting, like all of the grains and fruits and vegetables, and it's like a man who is able to, in the material sense, sustain himself rather than
Mm.
the monetary sense.
But at the same time he's he's being with a community that he feels like he belongs to and is forms a significant part of. Um,
Yes, and that's the golden mean of
mm.
Donshire,
And
is
just
we've got all these sort of, yeah.
to help raise those people who are not able to do what this man could do into becoming like
Yes,
that.
like Asians.
Mm.
Yeah, forgive me. This was a different conversation that we had the other day, where we were basically talking about like the possible future demographics of
Yeah.
Donshire. And one thing that I mentioned was like, well, some of the most deracinated, modernized people in the world are the East Asians. We might end up having, like, also we've been watching Squid Game together recently on the Discord server. You could come join us and watch Squid Game with us. Um, yeah, and like one of the things that show really hammers home is sort of the deracinated, sort of modern pseudo individualist, we might call it.
Yeah.
Um,
They're so individualist, but also dependent to the point where it seems like they're almost childlike.
yes, and anyway,
Sorry,
but
yeah, it's not.
the
This is
thing
going to
is,
be a Squid Game
yeah,
stream.
yeah. Anyway, but getting back to the beginning of this tangent, we were having like a bit of a demographics
Oh
conversation.
yeah,
Was
yeah.
basically the conclusion that we came to is like, yeah, we shouldn't try to keep any particular race or ethnicity out. We should be open and accepting of anyone who wants to join up, but we don't want to go out of our way to court diversity because that would be woke nonsense, and also we do end up with skewed demographics. Like if half of Donshire was like a bunch of deracinated, like what's it like? Well, I guess like the kind of people we'd be getting no matter what probably would be they'd be people who are yearning for Donshire,
Mm.
for self sufficiency, not people who have achieved it. Um, I guess it's like if we end up getting like half the people are Asians or whatever, we would have to sort of work. What's it? Have to work with that sort of the Asian mindset in mind, and um, basically we just have to plan things out more thoroughly. Just because I'm sure that any audience members who have ever, who have any Asian friends or interacted with like any number of Asian people probably know the fact that they are almost chronically uncreative, and almost chronically dependent on sort of cooperation sort of stuff. They're almost a super social version of the human being in that way.
Mm. Well, they're certainly, I suppose, distinct from Western European culture. Not necessarily a bad thing, as I was
Yeah, they're
saying
more
to you.
similar to Central Europeans,
Yeah.
I would say. They're more similar to Germans and
Mm.
well, there's probably other Central Europeans that are like that, but I can't think of one.
Yeah. Well, I think going back to the point of sort of accepting different peoples, it's just yeah, actively. If you were to actively encourage, a diverse array of peoples, it would you probably be um, getting the wrong kind of people in Dawnshire. It would be not people who are genuinely, um, who genuinely believe in the ideas that we're trying to set out, but just kind of
Yeah, we want Dawnshire needs people who believe in Dawnshire, not people who believe in diversity, equity, inclusion.
yeah. I think we're in a bit of trouble if we're getting those people into Dawnshire.
Um, Not necessarily all explicitly right wing, you know. Like it would be fine if we had like some pot smoking hippies around because they love their gardening and stuff.
They could be in the
They'd be
conservation
able
group,
to.
can't they?
Maybe not.
Well, yeah,
They'd probably be a part of it, but I think it would probably be headed by a. Because hippies are a bit soft, you know. The head of the conservation group would probably be some kind of like a hard-nosed Norwegian druid or
mm,
something.
or some sort of
You know,
very
like a,
devout old sort of wise man or something Christian, sort of wanting to,
well, maybe an Orthodox monk from Romania who spent 50 years living in the what are those mountains called in Romania and Hungary?
the oh, well, this kind of area around Transylvania, is that what you're?
Yeah,
Is it the
the
Carpathians?
Transylvanian
No,
Carpathians,
is
yeah.
that it? Oh, okay.
Like to get some, yeah, like that would be fun, if we had like some Orthodox monk, out of the Carpathian Mountains as
Mm.
like the head of conservation. Like the kind of guy who can literally feed a grizzly bear out of his
Yeah.
hands.
Well, do
Because
you
that's
think?
the sort of stuff those monks do. Have you ever seen
Yeah.
pictures, like literally feeding brown bears like little berries and stuff?
Yeah. Well, if I don't know, it's that Orthodox faith, hasn't it? It's got some it seems to give them some sort of superpowers.
Ooh, yes.
I'm not an Orthodox Christian. Just putting that out there.
Hmm.
I think that leads very nicely onto
Neither
some
am
of
I.
the rank stuff, wouldn't you say?
Oh yes, some of the yes. So yes. Speaking of Eastern Europe, because I think we've just talked about all the Dawnshire updates and stuff.
I think we got most of
Let's
that
move on to
done. Yeah.
current events. Yes. That's a nice segue. Completely unintentional. Uh, Current events / rank punditry. So there's been some nonsense in Eastern Europe. Englander, would you like to tell the audience, or shall I?
Go on, and I don't know. I guess we'll have our hot takes later.
Yes. Russia and Ukraine basically at it again. A tale as old as time. Uh, Putin, like there's all kinds of people trying to compare Putin to Hitler or Stalin or even like the old czars or whatever. I don't think that's fair because I think he is more of a fox and less of a lion than any of those people. Although I do recognize Stalin certainly had some foxish qualities. Uh, no, I don't think that Putin is trying to conquer any part of Ukraine for anything other than completely cynical reasons. I think, that the current invasion thing that is apparently going to happen will basically just be them trying to claim a warm water port in the Black Sea and maybe reclaim a little bit of the little bit of the eastern steppe of the sort of wide flat plains that you have in Ukraine. perhaps claim a little bit of the steppe lands where large ethnically Russian-speaking sort of populations live. Which, it'll probably be all kinds of brutal and nasty, but I don't see why America or Europe has any reason to get involved, and, you know, I don't know why NATO was ever making advances towards Ukraine in the first place, since NATO should theoretically be more worried about China than Russia, because, well, basically because, Russia is merely at least, my opinion, my uneducated civilian opinion,
Truck
is that
opinion.
Russia is, yes, my truck opinion is that Russia is a rival of the United States, whereas China is an outright enemy. Oh, and, let's say, like, America can work again, America, it is sometimes in America's best interest to work against Russia, but it is more often in America's best interest to work against China. And I do understand that those countries have a loose alliance and have for some time, but I'm also aware that they don't really like each other. It's a complete alliance of convenience, and if we sided with one or the other, that alliance would probably, again, my uneducated truck opinion, probably wouldn't be too hard to convince Russia to work against China.
So so if the EU geared itself against, or the West geared themselves against China, you think there'd be some kind of united front against them if if that were the case?
Yeah, basically, in my ideal world, China ends up getting divided four ways between Russia, Taiwan, Korea, and Japan.
Mm-hmm.
That is my ideal world. My ideal world is one in which Korea gets most of the historical Chinese land. Russia claims all of the pretty much useless sort of western steppes where the Uyghurs live because Russia already has large populations of Muslims anyway. It wouldn't be hard to basically it would be a very good way to sort of frame the liberation of the Uyghurs or whatever, to
Mm.
reunite them with their Muslim brothers living in whatever region of Russia. I forget the name of it, because
Well,
there is a particular region where the Muslims live in, mostly in Russia.
I think it would make a very entertaining future, I don't know, truck cast if we were just to draw out maps of the world into what we think the rightful borders should be. That'd probably end into
Yes,
some
for
quite entertaining
instance,
conversations, I
one of my probably my oh, that's a good way to work into unpopular opinions.
bet.
Another beautiful segue, Englander.
Was not intentional.
We're yes, we're being a bit quick today. So, basically, one of my unpopular opinions: Canada shouldn't exist.
Oh,
Basically, and neither should Mexico or several Central American countries. Basically, everything north of the Panama Canal ought to be the United States.
mm. Well, I'm not sure the kind of the Trump types would be very pleased with that suggestion. I'm not sure
The
they're
Latinos vote mostly Republican anyway.
well, yeah, but migration
Might as well
from the
send the army in to chase out the last of the to chase out the last of the drug cartels, and well, I say the last as if they're dwindling. They're actually growing in power.
mm,
Mexico's probably going to have a civil war any day now, and no one's talking about it because Mexico's not an important country.
they're probably be
Uh,
more concerned about the a shortage of tacos or something.
yes.
Not
But
that
again,
us
it's like
Brits
you can grow.
would miss very much from that, considering the state of our Mexican food.
Ah, yes, British Mexican food is terrible. For anyone who hasn't heard us talk about it before, there's literally a restaurant in in London, I believe it is, where the guacamole is just green colored mayonnaise. Because British food, what's it? Well, not really British food as a whole, no, but British ethnic cuisines, like a British Mexican food is kind of the worst.
Mm. Well,
Okay.
you're
You have
you.
any, yes?
Well, I was going to say you being American would have the Mexican migrants giving you the wonders of their national cuisine over there. So I guess you would.
Yes.
Do I have
Not
any
just
other?
that, it's also just the, like, we have access to fresher, authentic ingredients, like limes and
Mm,
avocado and all that, and, uh, and tomatillos, and it sounds like tomato. It's even in the same family, but it's different. Tomatillos are a sort of yellowish green color when they're ripe,
mm,
whereas tomatoes
okay.
are bright red. Um, Also, tomatillos have a weird papery shell on the outside of the fruit, similar to like an onion skin,
Mm.
but the
Well,
inside is like an ordinary sort of squishy tomato-like plant.
I'm not too sure what cuisine we've been brought over in Britain, but I suppose we'll slip probably too much into the American versus British conversation we had in the first truck cast, so probably leave it there.
Yes. And anyway, well, do you have any unpopular opinions on anything, an old thing that happened, a recent thing that happened? Just go on about it.
Uh, I can't really think of anything off the top of my head. I suppose, since we're on the subject of borders, I don't know if it's unpopular or not, but I think Hungary was especially hard done by after the First World War and should be significantly expanded if I were to have the power to do that. The poor state, the
Yeah,
rump state of Hungary since it's
yeah.
after those treaties.
They probably should have a little more control of the Carpathian Mountains.
Yeah.
Maybe not all of Well, no, not Transylvania though. I will say because I like Romania quite a lot. I'm a
Mm.
bit of a Romania fan, mostly because of Romanian TV, the semi-famous YouTuber. I actually, one of my most viewed videos before I unlisted all the pre dawnshire or all the pre-truckcast stuff was actually a fan video that I made all about a kitten that I got, and V actually commented on it.
Wow. Getting a.
He was literally like, "Oh, nice cat." Yeah. So I might list that video again sometime
Yeah.
soon, just so that I can have my lame claim to fame.
Mhm. For the
Yeah, yeah,
for the viewers, the current, I don't know, 3 extra viewers who would want to come over and see that.
yes. Right. So,
Oh,
the
Russia.
unpopular opinions really can be anything.
Yeah.
Oh, Russia, yes.
Um. No, I was going to try and return to the overall subject, but I suppose is there any unpopular opinions since we had the discussion, the rank discussion on the Ukraine situation? Is there anything to
Mm,
think about for Russia?
Russia. Mm. I basically just I do love a lot of traditional Russian culture. I certainly don't approve of Putin, but that's mostly just because I don't know what he's doing.
Mm,
Oh, because his famous tactic that he does is he fuels both sides.
yeah.
He gives money to the far left and the far right, quote unquote, in almost every country on earth, including his own country.
Mm.
So it's kind of impossible to know which side he is on.
Well, I think if this is an interesting question. If we actually, the big war dropped, and you know, Russia actually invaded Ukraine, and the US declared war, and you got drafted in, would you willingly go into Ukraine and fight for the against
No, I'd
Putin's
probably flee to
legions?
Argentina.
Yeah, probably do something similar.
My whole family might actually, yeah. Well, I guess that depends, you know. Cause uh, Trump did fail and all that, but he still does have like awesome personality, awesome rhetoric.
Mm.
It is possible. I am ashamed to say it, but if he was president when that happened, and he was, I unfortunately, like, I say this not as a brag, I say this as a bit of a bitter confession. I probably would willingly join the army if Donald Trump was president to go fight Russia.
Mm. Taken in by the Trumpian rhetoric.
Yes. That's my bitter
That's
my
your
bitter confession for the
Yeah.
day.
Well, it's not an unpopular opinion, but yeah, just a confession.
Yes, a slightly shameful. What's it? Probably a very popular opinion actually, but also a slightly shameful one.
Oh, I've thought of one, but
Um,
I suppose it's probably, I don't know how much you'll be able to relate to it, but I am look, due to the failures of Boris Johnson, Alexander Johnson, as he's
yeah.
properly called. I'm starting to grow more sympathetic to the Theresa May ministry, um, as compared to Johnson's. So you know what? I've come to the point where I would prefer Theresa May as Prime Minister over Boris Johnson. So there's my unpopular opinion. I don't know what you would respond to that.
I would just say that all of the Tories are cringe, and the Queen is cringe, and England needs another revolution,
So,
another civil
hmm,
war.
what would the factions be though?
I have no idea. North FC versus South FC, maybe.
That's a pretty.
Jamaicans versus everyone
Mm,
else. Uh, I mean, admittedly, the Muslim people living in England have been rather abusive to the local culture, but a caliphate of a British caliphate would be infinitely less paused and less cringe than anything existing today.
yeah,
And
marching arm in arm with our Pakistani brothers.
oh, not the Pakistanis. Deport all of them with the
Mm.
Persians or something. The Kurds, I guess.
Yes, well, when I mentioned
Yeah.
my unpopular opinion, I haven't reached the point of flag waving "I love Theresa May" T-shirt wearing status. I've I was just trying to put it out there that she's less bad, but she is still awful. So it's just I was just trying to give a point of how low we've reached with overall with our Tory politicians. I don't know what it's like for your Republicans, but um, well, I'm guessing it's pretty much the same situation.
Yeah.
I mean, would you? What in terms of like social policy and all that sort of uh, taking out foreign policy, what was George Bush, the junior, well, both of them like? Yep, good, thank you.
George Bush and all that. Basically just like Obama and white and slightly and less gun control.
So
Basically, if you want to know what the Bush years and the Clinton years were like, basically just take Obama and then subtract all what little melanin that man has, you know, because he got paler and paler as he became president. take the tiny amount of melanin in that man's body, remove all of it, and then remove the gun control policies, and basically you have the Bush years and the Clinton years.
That does not surprise me whatsoever.
Yeah. What else? Oh yes. So I suppose this is something that might spark a very hot debate in the comments, or perhaps a hot debate between me and you. Perhaps my most unpopular opinion in well, perhaps not the entire conservative sphere, but at the very least
the arranged
the
marriages
dissident right sphere. No, I've noticed that's actually very mainstream. Well, not very. That's actually vaguely mainstream among certain sections of the right. Especially the female sections of the dissident right seem to, small as they are, only 10% of self-proclaimed alt-right people are women, but they do tend to be sort of the most authoritarian, like Daughter of Albion and all that. No. My least popular, my most unpopular opinion, at least as far as the dissident right is concerned, is just that white women are the worst, not for any kind of political reason like people usually complain about white women. I just mean like objectively in terms of being attractive, like in the long term or whatever. I just find white women to be the least attractive because they age very poorly, Black don't crack, and Asians are practically elves, a 50-year-old Asian woman barely looks any different from a 25-year-old Asian woman. But but like a black but a white woman at 50 really looks 50.
Well, I think a sustainable long-term relationship with white women is probably hard to come by, probably at least in the younger generations, I would suspect now.
Yeah, it's the same problem though, pretty much with the black women because they're all American, they've all been corrupted by the same thing. Asians and Latinas is where you tend to get the really based stuff.
Yeah.
Asians are but not Asians. Latinas are kind of white anyway, though, so...
Then at the same
time... In terms
time...
of, like, personality and stuff, Latinas are certainly much better, but in terms of, like, physically being attractive, they're pretty much on the level,
But at the same time, do you want sort of a bunch of the... I don't know, say a bunch of us dissident rights here in Britain to just go over and marry based Asian women instead of our own British women? I don't know if that would be if that's the most desirable option.
Well, it wouldn't be for the Asian women, because Asian women prefer American men, not British men.
Well, whatever the equivalent would be.
And I was trying to be a bit of a humorous quip.
Oh.
Well, I think if you look at divorce rates, lowest divorce rates are actually white men coupled with women of other races. The absolute lowest, as far as I'm aware, is the divorce rate between white men and Asian women. But the next lowest divorce rate, it's something like 5% or something. It's very low. Is the divorce rate between white men and black women. But then you look at the divorce rate between white women and black men, which is probably the most common sort of mixed race or mixed ethnic couple in America, if not the world. It's absolutely, the divorce rate there is absolutely repugnant, It's something like 80% of black male, white female marriages end in divorce.
Yeah. Well, perhaps...
Although it should be said that may not necessarily be any kind of, there may not necessarily be a cultural or a biological reason for that, because it should be said black people in the U.S. are generally poorer, and poor men marrying wealthier women also have a like that usually tend to have very bad relationships and tend to have a very high divorce rate. So it could just be the fact that white women, or what's it, women of any race despise marrying a man who is poorer than them of any race.
Yeah. Well,
But obviously more research needs to be done.
yes, we are only trucks after all in these
Yes.
discussions. Um,
Anyway, but no, and so I would say Asians do sort of vaguely resemble British people anyway, because they're all short and they've all got dark hair and dark eyes, so, and very pale skin. So I would say in
are we
terms of
speaking of the same
demographics,
British people?
not much would change if everyone in like if like all the sort of disgruntled right wing British men uh, who couldn't find appropriate women locally just went to Korea or Japan or even Southeast Asia, like Taiwan or something, or Thailand or something, and married an Asian woman and then brought her back. I think probably that would work out mostly for the best for England, but then you would just have like a bunch of angry white spinsters, and probably like it might cause even more feminism to happen, which would not be good.
Well, I think your perception of English people or British people, whatever you said, is I would say is slightly. I would slightly challenge that. I would say that we're not that
It depends on
short
class. I've
or.
noticed. I've noticed
Mm,
poorer. I've noticed poorer British people are shorter, with paler skin and darker hair, whereas the sort of the aristocracy, people that have had money in their family for generations, tend to be descended. I've noticed. Perhaps it's the mixture of Norman and
yeah.
Danish heritage,
Hmm.
but they tend to be much taller, much fairer of hair, and slightly darker of skin.
You implying that there's some sort of Celtic, Norman Anglo-Saxon divide then in terms of height and eye color.
Yes.
Mm,
Oh, like, what's it? Like, I would say, well, and that is sort of interesting thing, because, like, in, what's it, like, I think that's the reason why England is darker than Scotland or Ireland, because Scotland and Ireland had much more Danish and Norwegian genetic influence, whereas England had a lot of French genetic influence.
well, French in the elite,
Wales was almost purely, yes?
French in the elite, I would say. Then there's it's split
I
between Celts and
yes.
Anglo-Saxons.
Yes. Um, yeah, that is probably a fair thing to say, and I think that's probably the reason why the elite, like, it's easier for for the elite classes. I've noticed it seems like it's a bit easier for the elites for British elites to get a natural tan than it is for poorer people. Like the stereotype of the poor British person is the pink-faced gammon for a reason. It's because they're very, very pale.
Mm. I mean,
Yeah.
you look at things like I guess a good example would be things like choir services, in the huge cathedrals and that sort of thing. There's loads of them were going on usually at Christmas, and when you have those people tend to be drawn from upper middle class or upper class backgrounds, and you can almost tell with some of them that they are from that class because we have a very different class system. It's almost has a slight racial element compared to America. Um, Not completely, so
Yeah.
it's to do
Well,
with.
in America, I would say no, I'd say it's the same phenomenon, but it's reverse emphasis. Like in America, the larger emphasis is on race and the lesser emphasis is on class.
Yeah.
And I would say in England, larger emphasis is on class, but
Yeah.
there's a small amount of this phenomenon which is also racial. Where like you've got the pure Celts, which is basically just the Welsh. They are short and pale and dark-haired and dark-eyed.
Mm.
And you've got the less genetically. You've got the Viking influenced Celts like the Scots and the Irish, who are famous for their for bright blue, green, or sometimes amber eyes, and for blonde, orange, or red hair. Of varying shades. And then you've got the English, which are like the high-ranking nobles will either have like sort of rich, sort of French-looking, dark curly hair, or they will have more sort of a Danish-looking, sort of long, well, not long, I should say, more sort of flowing, slightly fluffy blonde hair.
Mm.
Um,
I've no idea how
yeah,
we've managed to get to this conversation, but
yeah,
we've
it's a
worked to
bit
it in
of
some
it
way or
is a bit
another.
of rank,
Yes,
yeah, the
good old rank.
bizarre ethnic demography of England, rank punditry. My gosh, it's a wonder we haven't brought the
Mm.
Aryans into this.
I think
By
it's
which I don't mean
best
the
not go
Germans,
there.
by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Well, no. The funny thing is that is what's it like technically using using the word Aryan the way that a real modern scientist would use it. It's basically anyone that looks even a little bit white. So like the Jews, the Arabs, the Turks,
Mm.
most of the people in India, even though
Yeah.
they're very dark,
Yeah.
like in terms of the skeleton, it's a European looking skeleton, isn't it? No, North Africa. What's it like? Ironically, the people of Finland are more distantly related to other Europeans
Yeah.
than the Jews and the Arabs are to Europeans.
Mm. Well, aren't
You know,
Europeans tend to have more Neanderthal in them? I don't know if that's correct. Is it? I heard that at least from somewhere.
more so, much more so than Africans.
Yeah.
Africans are almost purely Homo sapien.
Mm.
Europeans do tend to have a little bit. However, the racial group with the most Neanderthal influence today, as far as I'm aware, is actually Asians.
Ah.
Sometimes as much as 12% of their DNA.
You
Which would
wouldn't think that,
explain
would you? Because
why.
they're quite well, on average, East Asians are quite short, aren't they? Neanderthals used to be kind of
Well,
very
the
tall.
Neanderthals were actually quite short, but they were very
Ah.
broad.
Oh yeah, sorry,
Uh,
yeah.
the, yeah. No, it's the thing that set homies. Well, because Neanderthals evolved in the forests of Europe, in the
Yeah.
dense forests.
Mhm.
They evolved almost like boars to sort of be these small, compact creatures that can blunder through the underbrush without getting caught on on the thorns and snags.
Mm.
Whereas, Homo sapiens evolved in Africa, on the sort of the shifting sands and the sort of the grassy plains of the savannah. And we basically evolved to be able to run quickly in a straight line and to be able to look over the tall grass. And that's kind of it. And what's it? You can still see this today in many African people. Like the Nuer of, I believe it is, of South Sudan. They're one of the darkest people groups in the world. They are, on average, they almost look like Australian Aboriginals. Their skin is an almost purple shade of black, sort of obsidian color.
Yeah.
And they average even taller than the Danish, something like 6.5 feet tall for women, and more like 6'9" for men.
Mm.
Um, and for this reason, you can actually find there's almost as many South Sudanese athletes in the American and European and even South American Olympic sports teams as
Yeah.
there are in the actual in the African sports teams.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yes.
Well, do you want to move on to something else, or is there anything else you'd like to cover?
Um. This has been an interesting, kind of a slightly bizarre
Mm,
conversation, but very
yeah.
interesting
I
nonetheless.
didn't expect to be
Um,
going here on this truckcast into these conversations.
yes, talking about obscure African tribes,
Yeah.
stuff like that. Yeah, yeah. No, I do actually kind of. I don't know all that much culturally about the New Era, but I do sort of just love the way they look. You know,
Mm,
like they're probably because they're just so tall
yeah.
and sort of slender. You know, what's it? Traditionally, they're nomadic cattle herders as well. You know, like they would literally almost like the Scottish drovers. They would have spent all their lives literally just walking around in like flat grasslands and occasionally the odd marsh or swamp, just moving the cattle from one place to another, like
Yeah.
similar to the Irish would have, you know, on foot without the help of horse.
Mm,
You know, so I don't know, and I am quite Scottish by heritage as well. You know, Baird clan on my mother's side, so you know, it could be perhaps that's one of the reasons why I find them to be like so cool. You know,
well,
that's just from one cow herd to another. You know.
well, us English don't tend to get on very well with anyone that we border, really. Welsh, Scottish,
Yes.
French, Irish.
Well, why? Yeah, why? Yeah,
Is there
why do
something?
you think that you went out and
Mm.
conquered the world? Because all your neighbors sucked, and you were just like, ah, screw this. I'll go live in the
Mm.
tropics of India. You know, I'd rather catch malaria and die
Yeah,
in the Caribbean.
I'd rather go into Antarctic explorations than be stuck around in England next to all these people.
Yeah. All right. So, unpopular opinions. I guess that's all of our unpopular opinions covered, plus a bit more
Yeah.
rank punditry. Work
Hmm.
stories. Anything interesting happen at work lately, Englander?
Mm. Well, most of the interesting things went on during sort of the summer because the kind of nature of golf and that sort of thing. They tend to be the kind of get really busy during the summer is when they kind of get
I
back.
always thought of golf as more of a spring sport.
Well, because it's
Of course, I guess.
because in Britain it's the summer holidays, isn't it? Which is when most people have their time off, and the strange
Yes,
people
and
who
I suppose
decide
it
to.
doesn't get yeah. I suppose it doesn't get unpleasantly hot in England either, the way
Mm,
that it would in
yeah,
America.
exactly. Yeah, so you could be
Yeah, you know,
outside and
like
doing
around yeah,
whatever.
yeah. But of course, it doesn't get too unpleasantly cold either. It's a
Yes, yeah,
weirdly, it's a weirdly sort of semi-tropical climate.
yeah. We have pleasant summers. Anyway, so some of the interesting, I guess, interesting stories. I don't know that many, but one of them was so obviously due to. Oh, I'm not going to dox myself or anything, but due to the migrant flows and all that sort of thing into just England overall, um, you tend to pick up lots of you tend to have lots of foreign customers and increasing that sort of thing. And one of the interesting things that we had once with this Turkish family who came in sort of it was a group of six of them, I think. So this big sorry, seven people. It was this two parents and five children. Um, some of them were kind of
Holy crap! I five children. I'm the
mm.
eldest of six children. I wonder if I secretly have some Turkish cousins.
Well, yeah, these people came in and they didn't. They spoke very poor English, and they handed me this £50 note, which in England a £50 note is like, whoa, is that it's probably counterfeit or something. And they kind of said, oh yeah,
Oh.
so I'm not
In
gonna.
America, it's not so much the $50 notes.
Mm,
Usually it's $100
yeah,
would be counterfeit, not the 50s.
yeah. So with these so this group, I took the notes, gave them sort of the huge amount of change due to giving me a £50 note, and I went into obviously you've got to get their stuff for them.
Wait a minute. How much did it cost for like a day of golf at the golf course where you work?
It's about £5 for a go, so it's not too bad.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, because I was thinking, like, in America, for a family of 7 people, $50 be very close to the actual, like, to the price, you know?
I'm gonna stick back because you're on the medic.
Yeah, well, I can't really remember the exact what the exact price was, but because they had children, it was the price was much, reduced quite a lot as well. But anyway, so I gave them all of their,
Yes, I forgot that. Continue.
so I gave them all of their, equipment and that kind of thing, and they kind of just stood there thinking that completely clueless, had no idea what they were doing, and they seem to have thought that they've walked into a zoo. So they were asking where all the animals were, in really bad Turkish, which I won't kind of put on an accent for. So I was.
Oh my gosh! Well, I can imagine as well. Where is animal? Where is animal?
Yeah, exactly.
So I met a Turkish family once when I was going to the beach in Florida. They'd been living in Texas for many years. But it was like a bunch of adult children with their elderly parents, and the one son was the only one who could speak English.
Yeah.
So he had to translate for all of his sisters and his parents. And well, he was a very congenial fellow. I got to be a bit of a friend with him.
Mm-hmm.
But it was sort of funny. Like one of the remarks I'll not forget is He's like, oh my goodness, his water is much cleaner than the Black Sea. Much cleaner than the water around Istanbul. So yes, continue. They were confused. They thought it was supposed to be a zoo.
Yeah, so they were thinking they were in the zoo. So I had to inform them. Oh, sorry, you just paid for a crazy golf, game. So they were kind of thinking. They were slightly confused, but they thought, all right, we'll go along with this. We'll play this crazy golf game. So I gave them all their stuff, and they didn't really know what they were doing. They never played this game before. So what I had to do was kind of almost walk around the entire course with them, showing them what to do, how to hit with the putter, to hit it into the ball, and recording the numbers. I felt like I was like it was very difficult because at the same time you had to manage all of the different customers. There was all the children still thinking it was a zoo. Were just trying to find the animals, and I was just there.
Oh my gosh!
Well, they were and they were sort of running around, hitting each other with these putters and throwing the balls around.
Oh my gosh! What were was it at least plastic putters for the kids?
Yeah, it was those small ones that they wouldn't have been able to do much harm, but it was absolute chaos.
Well, no, because
yeah, and I think they eventually just gave up and dropped all of their stuff and walked out and tried to find the zoo. I don't know where this zoo was, but
I hope they found it. I feel kind of bad for them.
Yeah. And then another interesting. I guess I'll move on to another interesting story, which actually happened quite recently, because our days are so short. By the time my shift ends, it's kind of completely dark. So, what this group of 13-year-old, this sort of group of 20, 13-year-old sort of kids, what they decide to do once is almost invade the crazy golf course. So they sort of started clambering over the fence and sort of scurrying around the whole course, just messing everything up. And I was just standing.
Are they gonna
there
steal something?
Well, I was just thinking of all the things to muck around in. Why are you going to a crazy golf course at in the pitch black in the middle of the night, trying to do whatever?
Yeah, that is that sort of thing would not be so out of place in America, but that happening at a golf course would be out of place. Like like a bunch of rambunctious young hooligans breaking into a candy store,
running, he must be low. He's behind the
or
store.
or like an arcade or something. That would be, especially in a big city, you know, like Chicago and New York. Nobody would really care.
There, don't go through. Don't go through.
Nobody would really care if it happened to a golf course either. They would just think it was bizarre. Like, what the heck did those kids have in mind?
Well, yeah, but they're just kind of. I didn't know what they had to gain from just being in that, coming in the pitch black and climbing over all the fences. But I was just, because I'm like the the wage slave in this course, so I couldn't really be bothered to shoo all 20 people out, because I get like swarmed by all 20. I don't think I could take them all on. So I just kind of
well,
waited.
that just makes me think of like the comedic image of like you know how golf courses, like mini golf courses, often have the windmills.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking like of you like hiding behind a windmill while a stampede of savage little children, running past, almost like zombies, like
Well, there's this sort of treasure chest type thing in this course, which is I want to say it's probably the perfect size for storing 13-year-old children in. So if I had any thoughts of putting any in there, there you go.
There we go.
Yeah, just for like say for you. It's like 2 minutes in the box.
Exactly, yes.
It's punishment for violating. Oh my gosh, my brother's being so loud right now. Hold on. Right, yeah, so I can just imagine it's like, you have violated the sovereignty of crazy mini golf course. How dare you?
Yeah, exactly. Do not come into my domain.
Yeah, oh gosh, like the car king, the mini golf king.
Yeah, I mean, there's all sort of small stories of people asking me to clean the public toilets, like I have any responsibility for it. Just thinking of me as like a tourist information centre, and just asking all sorts of random questions which I would have no idea.
Yes,
what the answer would
which actually, and the sad thing there is that actually is like a rational thing to presume about a random worker at a golf course. So it's, frankly, the misfortune there is not so much like, these customers are being no, it's the trouble there is like, my employer didn't even tell me what to do in this situation. Exactly, how dare he?
Being medic is nice.
Like if they tell me they've lost their keys or their car keys or something, how am I supposed to help them? There's not really much I can do there. Just kind of have to say.
I'd presume that you would have a radio, and all the other employees would have a radio, and you'd just be like, it's a code 223. Someone lost the keys.
Yeah, but the thing is, you work by yourself, so it's not really that easy.
Yeah. So really, the takeaway here, I think, is just that. Well, you don't want to dox yourself. That's true, but if you can, in any subtle, non-doxing way. Tell the British section of our audience what the golf course is, so they can avoid it. So that so that what's it? Just to punish your employer for being slightly irresponsible, it would seem.
Well, yes, but yeah, I will not give any clues as to the golf course. I think it's best. Unfortunately, as much as I would want
best left a mystery.
Yes. The mysterious golf.
Yes. Yeah, bum, somewhere in London County.
Yes.
But you know what? There's a part of me. Never mind. I'll not talk about it right now. So, work stories. I guess I ought to give you a work story then. It's not particularly interesting, but basically I worked at last October, I worked at a pumpkin patch.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like a proper pumpkin patch, where the pumpkins were actually grown. It was basically just a petting zoo where the owners had shipped in a bunch of, a bunch of pumpkins from like a different farm elsewhere in the county. basically, so that to lure in like like children and tourists and school field trips and all that sort of thing.
No, there's a peanut out there. Don't open it.
Gosh, my brother is being so annoying right now.
It's alright.
They changed it. His blink timer's the same no matter how many.
No, it's all right. It's my problem.
Yeah.
I could have scheduled things better on my
Fine.
end, but I didn't.
It's on rough again. It's
Well,
on rough again.
I was the one
Yeah,
who decided to do it tonight, so I don't know if tomorrow
Stop
will be
posting
a
about
better
Rough
time.
Among Us.
Yeah. Well, actually, just
Fair
earlier
enough, fair enough.
today would have been a better time, because when I wake up at like 7:30, he's still asleep because he works somewhat late nights at
I'm
Walmart.
fine.
Yes. I somewhat, I say. He works till like about 10 at Walmart. At Walmart. Yes, but as I was saying, I worked at this sort of almost this sort of like crude sort of not facade. This sort of like pseudo pumpkin patch. Included a petting zoo and a hayride and all those sorts of things. And basically, they'd employed like 2 or 3 more people than they needed to, so I didn't get nearly as many hours as I wanted. And when I did, I was eternally on garbage detail.
Ooh.
So my job was literally to wander the entire place, picking up every little bit of trash I could find and putting it in the nearest trash can. And it didn't matter how small it was, like even just the smallest little bit of like an aluminum wrapper from a candy or a piece of paper, because like, the little waxy bits of paper that come on like on a bandage on a plaster.
Yeah.
There was heaps of those lying around, because it was sort of like a playground type area. Lots of kids were bumping their knee and all that.
Take the other one.
So there was practically mountains of little, waxy Band-Aid wrappings everywhere.
Okay.
And like I literally was sort of so like such, like wagey, get back in the cagey, like worn down and sad. That at one point I saw one of the customers actually put something in the garbage, like in the bin properly. And I almost broke down and cried out of gratitude.
I don't know what it is for the thing.
Yeah.
It sounds like you couldn't get much more
Checkpoint was
boring,
there.
tedious work than that.
Dog.
Oh, by no means.
Michael broken.
Didn't even get any free snacks or drinks out of it. We still had to pay for soda pops and cookies and stuff at the snack shack.
Yeah, that's harsh. How long were the shifts? Sorry.
Let's see. That was only a few hours. I think maybe 4 hours each day, and I only worked there for about 4 days. I made about like $200, and I think it was like $100.10 or something. I was barely earning $11 an hour. Yeah, it's $11 an hour. That's like £9. 23, like that's like £9 basically for $11 is roughly £9 for any British people here.
Well,
actually,
I'll tell you what that sounds. Yes. Sorry, carry on. I'm gonna digress.
Well, no, that was just sort of the thing, and also like one slightly funny thing that happened one day was that one of the goats basically intentionally got himself stuck in between the feeding trough and the fence inside his enclosure, basically on purpose in order to get attention from the owners of the petting zoo.
Well, what was the reaction to that then?
Well, no, it was they literally just told me, "Oh, what color was the goat?" And I was like, it was a bit brown with
Yeah.
a white stomach and a black spot on its nose." And they're like, "Oh yeah, that's Susie. She's an attention whore. She got herself stuck on the food trough on purpose. Leave her alone. She'll get unstuck eventually without our help."
Yeah, well, the animals have their funny ways, I suppose.
Yes.
Well, on the
Goats in particular are Continue.
on the subject, I was going to lead on from your previous point on sort of the tediousness of it. I had
Yes,
to do
the
this.
tedium.
I had to do this volunteering thing. Well, not had to. As part of this like youth group, I used to, Boy Scouts kind of thing when I was younger.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things we had to do was bag packing. So in the supermarkets, you packed people's bags, or you offered them help, and in return they'll give you a bit of money for your group, and
Yeah,
and this so this
tips and all that.
yeah so the kind of the shifts, I suppose, of the sessions I used to do it at around Christmas, and obviously be incredibly busy around that time. But the problem was no one wanted you to pack their bags, which is completely understandable, because if there was an 11-year-old, asking if you wanted someone to pack your bags, it's slightly annoying, probably.
Alright, so how'd it go?
And
Bad, probably stupidly wrong.
Yeah, well, it sort of reminds me of like the Mexican children that
Ow, your feet.
that like wash your windows to make you feel guilty, so you give them money.
Yeah, well, in this
Which isn't really a thing in America, but it's very much a thing in Mexico.
in this in this in this supermarket, there was this huge clock right above me, just completely visible. If I just made the slightest look up, I could see it. And since no one was wanting to meet any help for me to help them with packing their bags, the 3 hours was spent usually just me staring at the clock as the seconds ticked by, and
Oh dear.
that was probably one of the most boring experiences I have ever had.
That reminds me of a much more fulfilling experience that I have had several times. Would you like me to go on about it?
Yes, brighten the mood, gone.
Yes. So basically, that sort of like soup kitchen type stuff, collecting food donations.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically just my church and several others, back when I lived in Illinois, there were several churches in my area, including the one that I attended, which would all sort of get together to collect canned food around the neighborhood. Basic canned food drive, very typical.
What? I didn't see him!
My goodness.
I didn't see him!
Sorry, my brother is being very loud. He's playing one of those SCP video games,
Oh yeah.
Anyways, as I was saying, what was it? Oh yes. So we'd literally go around, like in my dad's van or whatever, from house to house, picking up these. They were like these sort of specialized blue grocery sacks that were meant for collecting the charity canned food. And we'd go from house to house, collecting the canned food, and dry food stuffs and all that sort of thing. And then after we had done that for a couple of hours, basically after we'd gotten like the whole neighborhood we'd been assigned, we'd collected all the food, we would go to the actual soup kitchen, and we would basically we just help organize it, so like there was there was one bin for tuna, one bin for salmon, one bin for pork, one bin for pork and beans, one bin for mixed vegetables, one bin just for green beans, one for peas, one for carrots, etc. One bin for freeze-dried apples, another bin for raisins, all those sorts of things.
And were they used?
It's 1-1 again. It's 1-1
quite
again.
a lot by the less fortunate.
I don't
It's
know
not
how
one.
often. I don't know how often any poor people in that neighborhood actually went there, but I will say, the town in Illinois where I used to live, it was Belleville, Illinois, which is it's just a little ways north of St.
You're
Louis.
standing on the ledge.
Yeah.
You're standing on.
And it suffers very much the same problems. You know, people sometimes joke about Belleville being South Chicago because it is sort of weird and corrupt and impoverished, in spite of the fact that it's basically a suburban
I
type
gotta pull out the
city.
gun and shoot all the D-class.
In spite of the fact
Those
that
are
it's a
fine.
relatively small town.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's still fine.
So it is entirely, even though I don't know for certain, it is entirely possible that there were, like,
I'm gonna be honest, I genuinely forgot.
mass hordes of homeless people that I was
I'm just
unaware
that
of
stupid.
that
Peanut,
relied on
peanut.
that soup kitchen that I worked at, you know, as like an annual thing every year
I don't either.
during the winter.
All reminds me of much of the
Yeah, if you
what
die,
we're
the janitor
talking
can clean up your
about,
body. It's fine.
with dawnshire, you know, the community building, that sort of thing. That's the kind of
Yeah.
those sort of actions would hopefully be commonplace, you would think.
Yeah, hopefully we wouldn't have too many homeless people,
Yeah,
but
yeah, but just generally people who are not as fortunate as others.
yeah, you know, like, what's it? If the Jenkins pig gets sick and dies, everyone from the community would pitch in to make sure that they still have meat during the next winter.
Yeah, I mean even like organising sort of celebrations and big parties and, you know, banquets between sort of the whole village and that sort of thing, where you all, you know, there's this big tent and you all sort of everyone's on these big huge benches and that sort of thing. You're having a meal together.
Mm-hmm. That actually does remind me, you know, was, what's it? Something that we should sort of take, what's it? We should learn from the mistakes and successes of people that have done what we are trying to do before.
Yeah.
And one thing that a lot of sort of hippie commune-type communities have sort of discovered over the years is that basically if you want to get into that kind of community building stuff, people still need their own space. And you can't really have communal meals more often than once a week.
Yeah. Well, as I said, they're celebrations, weren't they? Not rather than
Yeah.
festivals, rather than daily things.
Yeah.
I think to have that kind of communal living, you'd have to be something like the Bruderhofs or the Amish, who are already very, very closely related as families.
Yeah, but even the Amish, you know, each guy still got his farm and all that, you know, like, even they are not as communal as what, like, a lot of idealistic hippies sort of aspire to.
Yeah.
Well,
I think the Bruderhofs
I've never heard of the Bruderhofs, though.
They're probably the most communal
What are they?
Groups you could possibly have, or at least I can think of in the real world. So they're like these small German communities in Britain that as soon as you as soon as you sign up to them, you forfeit all of your goods and property for the community. So
it does sound like something the Germans would do.
And everyone, so you move into this place, they give you everything you need, and you know you have meals with the whole community every day, and it's probably, you know, you get assigned work by the leaders of the community, and then you kind of, when you're 18, if anyone's been raised in these communities, they get them to go into the outside world to see what it's like, and if they decide to stay in the Bruderhof groups, they can, but if they want to leave, they can also leave. So that's
yeah, that basically does just sound like the Amish, but even more German.
Yeah.
You know, that just sounds almost like Amish on steroids or something.
No, what?
They're
No,
not
no.
as
My brother.
they're not as big on the technology. That they're willing to have technology, but
Take it.
it's all very traditional
Yeah.
clothing
that,
and that kind of thing, though.
Stop wait.
In which case, that actually is rather similar to like a lot of because everyone always thinks of the Amish, and sometimes a person will think of the Mennonites, but
No.
there's actually dozens of little German Protestant
I survived for
communities,
so long.
traditional German Protestant communities all across America, and the
We
Amish and the Mennonites
almost
are basically just the
survived.
biggest.
Yeah.
You go right into NTF and
You know,
get
and
shot.
most of them aren't nearly as technophobic as the Amish, and some of them
Why'd you kill
are
us then? You
even
could have been chill.
more open to technology than the Mennonites.
Yeah. Well, it's all there's sort of very
You're not
conservative
teaming. You're
Amish,
just
isn't there? And then
coincidentally
very
ignoring us.
the more open Amish when it comes to technology. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you say
varies.
open Amish. Basically, the most open
Ooh,
with
gunshots.
technology
I
an
wanna go
Amish
get those
person
in my
ever
face.
gets is they will have one telephone that they keep in the barn,
Kill
so
me.
that way it does not corrupt the house, and they only ever use it for business, basically. You know, because like Amish furniture makers and that sort of thing. You know, they literally just use it for negotiating the price of commissioned pieces.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is those communities probably the happiest, or just still a very good time during the whole coronavirus and lockdown, because they weren't exposed to the mass media and the panic and that sort of
Some
thing.
degree, yes, but I have heard that some Amish communities actually were very badly oppressed by the government during the COVID stuff.
So would they have to worn masks and that
Like
kind
there
of
were
thing?
social workers going in trying. Yeah, like there were apparently. I'm not sure it's true. Maybe it's just a bit. Maybe it's just hearsay.
Yeah.
But if the gossip is correct, there were like evil social workers going into the Amish and Mennonite, the German Protestant communities, and forcing them to wear masks and social distance and everything.
Yeah, that's awful when you think about it, really.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they had any, they looked upon that person who was trying to enforce that with disdain and despised them.
Well, yeah, yeah. I don't know how passive aggressive the Amish actually are, but in America we do have this stereotype of the Amish because they are pacifists.
Yeah.
Time to go shoot
We do have this stereotype that they're incredibly passive aggressive because it's like in the German
Okay, so
in the Weird Al song Amish Paradise.
Go down there. If we all go down there, we kill them.
It's
Yeah,
like
watch the guns.
an Amish person is not afraid to turn the other cheek when you strike him because he will just be self-righteously thinking to himself that you are going to burn in hell.
Yeah.
I'll hold your fire. Shoot things.
It is probably mostly true that the Amish are the happiest people in America.
Okay, so look down.
But
forehead.
we cannot ignore the fact that there are some, however small and scanty, they're not perfect. They're still human.
Yeah. Well, we've got to take the
I hit something with a grenade.
the tips, I suppose, from their actual communities, the Dawnshire as well, because they're ones that have been realised in real life.
Yeah, realized for hundreds of years as well.
Yeah. Well,
there are Amish. Yeah.
Their communities, I suppose, give us an insight into the more medieval or the kind of the communities before the Industrial Revolution. And it's
almost, yes.
Makes you almost think that
I'm not aware of.
they weren't really as
Continue.
not oppressed, but just unhappy as some of us today would make them out to be.
Yeah. I mean, what's it? They have something like, because they do have, I forget what they call it, but it's sort of like a quest thing they send the young people out on.
Yeah.
Where, like, after they turn 18, for 2 years, they are to live in what the Amish call the English world. That's basically, ordinary America. And, what's it? Oh, yes. Basically, during this time, the young Amish person is allowed to do literally whatever they want. Hard drugs, sex, doesn't matter, because part of the ceremony when they return to the community is to have all of their sins in the outside world sort of absolved and forgiven.
Yeah.
Anyway, and so sort of basically it's just like, hey, you're getting a bit older. You're getting a bit discontent with the quiet life here in Dardenhof or whatever. The insert weird Pennsylvania dialect German name here. You're getting a bit discontent. That's understandable. Go and live in the paused outside world for 2 years and tell us what you think. And something like 80% of young Amish people choose to return to the Amish world after they've gone on their little quest.
Yeah. Well, that must be a horrible feeling as the parents to send your child off, I suppose, because you'd be thinking, are they going to return? Are they going to come back? At that point.
Yeah.
Because they could be, corrupted, I suppose.
Yeah. No, but it's like, I wonder, maybe, I think that they might fear that less than we would, actually, because for one thing, they've just got a more old-fashioned, perspective on life, so they figure that they're probably a little bit more confident in their children that they'll come back.
Hmm.
And even if the kid doesn't come back, even if the child dies or just decides they'd rather live in the English world, Amish person's not going to worry too much about that because they're just like, it is what it is. You can't, it is like, I am not God. I cannot control the universe. I will pray all I can do is pray for mercy and salvation for myself and those around me.
Mm. Well, it's a subject we were talking a bit about with dawnshire, isn't it, in terms of quests and going outside into the modern world and having some sort of purpose, and then seeing whether you would want to return after experiencing modernity.
Yeah, we might call it something like the like Pause Trek or something,
Yeah. Well, the thing well, one thing I was thinking about with this is, would we want to educate children as to the evils of some of the evils of the modern world, or would we kind of try and educate them outside of that and try to kind of let them grow healthily and not just without those kind of.
I don't think we want to. I think the trouble with either of those techniques is that there's a thin line in between raising them with the ordinary healthy bias in favor of the civilization in which they live and indoctrination.
Mm.
There's a fine line between those two things, and so I don't know. That's something for further consideration, I would say. Also, I think that would just depend on the character of the people. Like if we ended up with a predominantly
what's the time?
Like Japanese or Korean or German community in Dawnshire.
Yep.
I think we would very much want to focus on educating them on in what you described as like sort of like a wholesome, healthy way of just sort of living in the beauty of Dawnshire.
Yeah.
Whereas if we had more free-spirited English, French, Spanish type people, you know, Western Europeans, I guess we would say, as opposed to Central Europeans.
Mm. Well, they wouldn't need to be.
I suppose then we would, yes?
They wouldn't need to be, indoctrinated. They were simply kind of the experiences of the world around them, what they were raised in.
Yes, and
would be
yes,
kind
and
of
of course, well, I guess
would
that's
instill those values in them that we would want.
yeah, yeah, and I guess that's also part of the thing. You know, it's like it's not really the state's worry to educate these children;
No.
it's their parents.
Mm-hmm.
At the most basic level, and at a slightly less basic level, it is the churches.
Yeah, which would be
You
the
know,
kind of more
the steward.
the advanced stage, I suppose, of education. If the children would want to go on further than what their parents.
Yeah, you know, like the steward basically shouldn't worry about education beyond his own children,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, perhaps the managing the public library.
Yeah.
You know, like I think that if anything paused or modern was going to be allowed into Dawnshire, it would be allowed specifically within the public library. You know, specifically with the idea of like, well, of almost like sort of intentionally being repulsive of like, you know, it's like, oh, the evil of the outside world. You know, those people wrote Lolita. They literally write, you know, like horrible romantic novels about underage girls.
Or do you think we would have a almost like a forbidden adult section, or would children be allowed access to it? As in, I guess it depends what age.
I'm not sure that I think that would be more so the parents' job to manage. So I think it would just be no children unattended in the library whatsoever.
I mean, as we said, that's probably the more advanced stage of education. So they wouldn't be like, you wouldn't have an 8-year-old going in and seeing these things.
Yeah. You know, like you would have, you know, like if the Morgenbrauts wanted to, you know, educate their child on physics and they didn't have any physics textbooks, they could go and get some from the library. But, you know, they would not send little Johnny Morgenbraut to go study in the library by himself. You know, it would be like a Mr. Morgenbraut would go and get the book from the library and take it home for a week or a month or whatever.
It wouldn't be the 8-year-old child going in and picking up, I don't know, a copy of Critical Race Theory or the God Delusion by Richard Dawkins or something like that. It would it wouldn't be that kind of thing, I suppose.
Yeah. Another thing also is I suppose a person must always be careful never to lean too much on one thing, but I think that if Dawnshire has any kind of strength, it's probably sentimentalism. You know, like because I was thinking, you know, it's like, you know, like a God Delusion, you know, like all these sorts of the paused books, we might say.
Yeah.
Would we want to make our own books sort of disputing that, or would that be a bit cringe? You know, and I feel like, yeah, that would be a bit cringe. The message of Dawnshire is something so transcendent that the only necessary response to the slings and arrows of the outside world is to say, those books make you feel sad when you read them.
Yeah, well, you just have to look at the world around you. You don't need look at Dawnshire and what the kind of what we've created is something far more natural and far more wholesome than what they do. We don't need to defeat these arguments with rationalism or anything like that. I mean, we can have a go, but ultimately, you'll not be able to defeat this ideology with rationalism. You can't make people come over to our side purely by rationalism. It's going to be some form of something far deeper than that.
Yeah, it'll be spiritual, it'll be sentimental, and to a certain degree instinctive.
Yeah, I mean, you'll be sitting around, you know, that campfire, and you'll be singing songs about Dawnshire, and you'll be doing that sort of thing, and you'd be thinking, well, wow, this is there's something more to this than I don't know. Why can't God be a spaghetti monster? Christians Christians destroyed, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Facts and logic.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, ugh, facts and logic.
Remember those
Ben
days,
Shapiro is. Mm-hmm. Oh, remember those days we were so wild. Yeah. I remember. Oh, the carefree days of 2016.
But
back when Donald Trump was first elected and the future seemed so bright.
But I am glad. I'm glad though. I don't look back and want to return to it. I'm glad we've reached the conclusions we have and got to where we are, compared to before.
I suppose God only knows, really, it's like you're making mistakes in the past. It's possible we're making mistakes now, but we gotta have a bit of confidence,
I feel like we're reaching something. I don't know if we're reaching some kind of truth. It's not perfect.
It's not the be all end all, but it's better than it was before.
Exactly. Yeah. We were never in 2016. The rights focus. I don't know what you were thinking of at that time. I mean, I was barely politically conscious at all, but the rights focus was more on dunking on the those kind of crazy SJWs, the kind of very small group of radicals and obvious net negatives for the current system. But we've kind of moved beyond that. We've moved into a far more critique of the society rather than a critique of these select few individuals. It's
well, Joker was an influential piece of art. We live in a society, Batman.
Well, we've
know that Batman's not actually in that movie, but you know what I mean.
Well, we wouldn't have been critiquing mass and scale back in 2016, would we? Or trying to figure out what a positive vision is, or that sort of thing. I don't know what it might have been for you. I was probably too young at that time.
I've always been sentimental. I always what's it like back then? No, but back then it was a much more individualist vision for me. Like back then, it was the very beginning of my reactionary journey. I was still reading it was The Self-Sufficient Life and How to Live It.
Yeah.
I forget by what author, but it's a very good book. You can read it yourself if you'd like. It's got very detailed descriptions and illustrations of all the little bits of farm life, and it goes through various traditional sort of customary things. One remark was, when you slaughter a cow, it's customary to let the flesh rest after you've split the carcass for at least a day. So, after putting it in a cold, shady place, maybe if you live someplace up north, like Scotland, or parts of Canada, you can probably just leave the sides of beef to rest in the barn. Or else, living further south, you might leave it to chill in a refrigerator. But after you've gutted it, it's traditional the next day, before you go to break the sides down into steaks and ribs and all the various little cuts, it's customary to fry up the liver for breakfast.
Well,
and it just had loads of little anecdotes like that I thought were very interesting.
Well, I will have to. Unfortunately, I will have to go in about 5-10 minutes. But I will add. I will add to this. One thing I definitely know about what we were like in 2016 is that we still thought there was a solution within the political system through voting. In terms of our societal problems, if only X law could be repealed, if only X tax could be lowered or something, or X culture, or X law could be put in doing something. Dawnshire is kind of an entirely. You couldn't vote your way to Dawnshire in a mass democracy.
Yeah. You could barely. You might be able to do it in like a proper, in any kind of some kind of functioning republic, but it would be difficult.
Yeah.
It would be difficult in a functioning republic, and it would be, as you said, absolutely impossible in any form of mass democracy.
Well, as we were saying before, we feel like insignificant cogs almost in the current mass democracies that we have. Our votes really, if you and me, or if you got 3 other friends in your, I don't know, what do they call it, county districts or something, whatever, however the electoral system works, to get together and vote for so and so, it really would not make any difference whatsoever to the overall result.
Yeah, I could plaster my whole neighborhood with posters for such and such person, but that wouldn't change much.
You probably persuade
because, American politics is very. Yeah, American politics is very tribal. Occasionally, you'll get populist demagogues like Trump that are able to motivate people from both sides to vote for and against them.
Yeah.
But for the most part, basically, the politicians on both sides are inanimate objects, practically just a glass of water with the letter D or the letter R written on it. And the party as a whole is more so the thing that you're voting for.
Yeah. I mean, a positive vision in and of itself really is not something you can achieve through that, through a politician. It's something we have got to put in the effort. It's us, not anybody in charge. We can't just put a vote in a ballot box or something and say, oh yes, Dawnshire's created now, and our positive vision's made, and life's all great. It's not that simple, and we've got to actually put the work in to achieve something like that.
Yes. Okay, so I guess, do you still have any time? Because there is one childhood story that's rather funny that I'd like to share.
Please go ahead.
Okay, so, years and years ago, when I lived in Alaska, because I'm the oldest of 6 children. At the time, I was the oldest of 4. And, my youngest sibling at the time, at around, let's see, it was about, it was nearly, yes, it was about...
Are we down a few minutes, Dab?
11 years ago. So about in 2011. My youngest sibling was still like an infant, and my mother was breastfeeding at the time. But she was struggling to feed this baby, so she actually had to buy surplus breast milk from other mothers in the area. And one of the women that she semi-regularly bought from was a Russian lady, one of the sort of little Russian villages you get in Alaska. That sort of very skinny, ever so slightly tall woman with short blonde hair. And she always wore sunglasses as well, and they always exchanged money and product at a gas station at the edge of town. So growing up, I always thought it was a bit silly. It's like, this looks like a drug deal or something, but you're just buying baby food. This is the goofiest stuff ever. And so that was just sort of a weird thing that happened. I can't hear you though. Maybe it's my headphones.
Sorry, yeah. I'm still here, yeah.
They're connected, yes. Yes, that's just a funny story from my childhood in Alaska.
Sorry, you might have cut out for the last bit. I didn't hear the end.
Oh no, did I cut out? Sorry. So the end of the story. Oh, I think it was because I couldn't hear you. So basically, I was living in Alaska about 2011. Never mind. It's not that interesting.
We basically
okay. So about 2011, I was the oldest of 4 children at the time, not 6, and my youngest sibling was an infant at the time, and my mother was struggling to breastfeed her, so she would buy extra breast milk from other mothers in the neighborhood. Well, I say the neighborhood, in the area, really, more like the whole county.
Yeah.
Well, just because it is sort of like a weird niche thing, and it's hard to find people in your local area doing that sort of thing. And one of the people she regularly bought from was like this very skinny, slightly suspicious-looking Russian woman who always wore sunglasses, so she looked a bit like a drug dealer. Yeah, and of course the fact that the Russian community, which is one of the largest ethnic communities in Alaska, are known for being, I don't know if it's actually statistically true, but Anglo-Alaskans sort of look down on them in the same way that Europeans look down on gypsies.
Yeah.
They're just sort of regarded as being like a bit scum and a bit criminal, so it was almost stereotypically fitting that this suspiciously skinny, blonde Russian woman always wore sunglasses.
Yes, well, I think that's a lovely story to end there, I suppose. Should we cut off?
Yeah. Well, it was lovely talking to you, and
yeah.
I hope the audience enjoyed this week's episode of the Truckcast.
Yes, it wasn't very it wasn't very structured or organised or whatever, but we had a good few
No, but I think
good few conversations.
Yes, we should break this down into clips later. The video editor I got, by the way, wasn't quite able to work, so although it does sort of shame me to put too much pressure on you, since I know that, well, you're considerably more busy than I am most of the time. For the time being, at least, until I can find better editing software, I'm afraid that I would like to request you to edit the clips.
Yeah, that's fine. That's
okay.
I think for things like these, I mean,
Continue.
it's not very difficult at all.
Okay. Actually, it occurs to me, isn't there a bit of an editing feature on YouTube? Couldn't I just, in the upload, make short clips there?
Probably could. I mean, if you, look it up, see if you can do it. Might as well try.
All right then. Yeah. See you next week then.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I see you later today, probably. But record again next week, probably.
Yeah. Goodbye, everyone. Do you want to do your amazing outro?
Oh gosh, I nearly forgot it. Would you like to sign off then?
No,
because I've somewhat forgotten it.
What's to do with Discord and subscribing and.
Oh yes. So, thank you for sitting through. How many hours was it, Englisher or Englander?
Oh, nearly 2, I think. So fairly decent stream.
So, yeah. I would like to thank the audience for sitting through 2 hours of what I'm sure was almost inane babbling from the two of us. And I would ask you to, if you enjoyed anything that you watched here today, please hit the like button, subscribe, and please check out our Reddit at what was it called? Yes, r/dawnshire. And please feel free to request an invite to the Dawnshire Discord server. We would love to, which is not exclusively for talking about Dawnshire. You know, we do have a speakers corner sort of chat room where you guys can talk about anything else on the podcast that might strike your fancy. Basically just whatever random stuff you want to talk about, because, you know, it's speakers corner, it's free speech.
We have some good chats on there, so if anyone else wants to join in, they're more than welcome to.
Yes. And I suppose that ends this week's episode of the Truckcast, doesn't it, Englander?
Yes. Goodbye.
Yes, goodbye.